You have no idea how much I want to slap out of you right now.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for the latest top 5 on the channel. You know, we've been doing a lot of, series analysis, stuff like that. Today I want to do something a little different with a good friend of mine. He's been a comic reader for maybe as long as I've been alive. How you doing, Eric Breen?
I'm doing good, Wes. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. You know, with your breadth of knowledge in the industry, and you've been a comic reader for how long?
45, 46 years, give or take.
All right. So you've been through the good times. You've been through the bad times. You've experienced a lot of this. And today I want to talk about the top 5 slaps in the face the comic industry gave their customers, their readers, the fans like you. What do you think about that?
I am ready.
All right. What's number 5?
Okay. Well, I didn't do a particular order per se, but I want to start, my first slap is Spider-Man's trifecta of disrespecta. And these all happened in about a 3-year period, starting in about 2004. But I'm going to lead off with the elephant in the room, which was, of course, One More Day. It's where they took a guy happily married and who had just come off of one of the greatest moments in his career. This was during Civil War, and his ID had been outed, and Aunt May was shot, and Peter found out it was the Kingpin. So he went to the prison where Kingpin had ordered it from, basically just took off his mask and beat the shit out of him and said, "I'm going to come back when you least expect it, and I'm going to kill you." He goes, "I'm going to stick my hand down your throat, shoot webbing into your esophagus, and choke you out. And there's nothing you can do about it. And you just have to sit there and think about when I'm coming." So, I mean, they made him, I thought, man, this is the best they've portrayed this character in years. And 2 issues later, he makes a deal with Mephisto to save Aunt May at the cost of his marriage, so they could reset it back to Petey Wheat Cakes. And I'm surprised they didn't bring back Uncle Ben. And it was just brutal for longtime readers that they would basically reset him back to the guy that he was, or what they perceived him to be at the beginning. The hard luck loser that couldn't get a date and blah blah blah. But before that, a couple years before that, they gave us the Sins Remembered story, where it was revealed that Peter and Gwen, even though they'd been together for a couple years in the last, by that time would have been the late 90s, early 2000s, they tried to tell us that they never slept together. So that's why when Gwen came, or we found out Gwen had 2 children, we knew they couldn't be his. And that's when we found out they were Norman Osborn's, because by all means, you don't sleep with your boyfriend that you're in love with, but you'll go sleep with his roommate's, creepy dad. But, and the third was what Brian Michael Bendis did to Spider-Man in the Avengers. I guess since he never bothers to read anything that came before him, he decided the Avengers needed a mascot, a class clown, a jester, a tackling dummy, whatever you want to call it. And he elected Spider-Man to be that character. And in the entire time he was in the Avengers, I can't remember him contributing anything positive to any battle. It's like, he would run off half-cocked, and, they'd have to fix his messes, like, "Oh, little Spidey ran off again, and now we have to go save the world from him first." And it's like, this is a guy that had been around basically from day one, and he was treated like, he had less respect than Speedball. So that's, the first character assassination that,
One More Day is like the coup de grace. Like, how can you just destroy a character, do something so against his character traits and his history to make a deal with the devil and to end the marriage to the love of his life. And of course, the Norman Osborn retcon was just awful, disgusting. How can this get worse?
Okay, so my next one is another character assassination. This is also another two-parter. So my second slap in the face, Superman. I'm going to start with what Mark Waid and Jeff Johns and Richard Donner basically teamed up to do to John Byrne in Marv Wolfman's version. Now, as someone that's been reading comics since the mid-'70s, I had a good decade of reading Superman, whose adventures were beginning and end, usually in one issue. Really no continuity to speak of. I mean, the guy could, literally play pool with planets. He was so powerful. So I mean, he was with Lois Lane, and no one knew that, no one even suspected that Clark could be Superman except for her, but it was just they were just adventures for little children, basically. Well, when DC hired Byrne, to fix him after Crisis, I thought he gave us the best version of Superman that we've ever had to this day. Because he made the character, cool and interesting, and someone that you wanted to read. And when they, within like 3 or 4 years, and Byrne was gone by then, but his ideas were still there. When they had the 4 Superman books and they all connected, they were numbered so you could follow along. That was great reading. And for about 10 years, the character I thought was written very, very well. And he wasn't overpowered anymore. But then I found out later that Mark Waid was never on board with that idea, and he missed the Silver Age Superman. And apparently, Jeff Johns, when he started to get a little clout there in the early 21st century, he agreed with him. So eventually, I think in 2003, Mark Waid wrote Birthright, which officially replaced Man of Steel as his origin story. So all of a sudden he's back to being the blue suit wearing, sniveling and, doing that with the glasses all the time guy that, that he was in the Silver Age. Now, my take would be, they got rid of everything but the marriage. And my take was always, there's no way Lois Lane chooses Clark Kent over Superman, not knowing they were the same person, if the version she knew was that sniveling guy that pretended to be afraid of his own shadow. So it kind of destroyed the whole, characterization of Superman by doing that. And, so that when, going forward, by that time, I said they had purged everything from Byrne and Wolfman's, characterization of Superman, to the point to where by the time we got around to, Flashpoint, I mean, the last thing we got out of him before Flashpoint was Superman walks across America. Now, so 1978. Remember the first movie, You Will Believe a Man Can Fly? And then we have You Will Believe a Man Can Walk. And the second part was, I said, I'll get into the New 52 a little bit, but I kind of like to pretend that didn't happen. But when with Rebirth, when Peter J. Tomasi and Dan Jurgens gave us what I thought was the second best characterization of Superman ever, the family man, raising a son, happily married. I said, I didn't believe that they would ever have the guts to do. Of course, I never thought they'd ever even have him get married. I said in 1975, you read those stories and you go, yeah, that ain't happening. But it did. Now he's still married, has a kid, and for about 2.5 years, give or take, we got just great adventures. I mean, the Super Sons, all of that, and then Bendis comes all over it, and in less than a year, he absolutely destroyed everything about Tomasi and Jurgens' run. And I don't need to go into the details. You guys have all read the books. What he did to that character is unforgivable. But unfortunately, he apparently has the power at DC. So I don't think that character is going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, it certainly appears that Bendis is probably going to be the CCO within like 3 or 4 years of DC Comics. I don't see him undoing his terrible take on that character. And I have quite a few videos on that on the channel. If you want more details, come to Thinking Critical. We got them.
Okay, let's see. I guess next we will go with. Now this is more of a collector's gripe than a reader's gripe. Oh, I forgot to slap myself. Everybody, most people, give Marvel credit or blame Marvel for legacy numbering when in reality they didn't start it, they just perfected it. DC actually got the ball rolling on that after the Crisis when they relaunched Wonder Woman, Flash, and Justice League. And then within a couple years, they relaunched Green Lantern. Now, at the time, they were smart enough to leave, Batman, Superman, Action, and Detective alone. But, and it was just those ones. And those books, all those books that I mentioned actually got back into the 200s before the endless relaunches began. But, and Marvel didn't start doing that until the time it got so bad when they sold off some of their licenses to Image for a year. Fantastic Four, Avengers, etc. They decided they'd go ahead and change the numbering on Spider-Man, which I wish they had never done, but that's that ship has long sailed. And at some point between the mid to late 90s and within the next 10 or so years, it was just relaunch fever on the renumbering. And now we're lucky. I said Marvel celebrates anniversaries with issue 25s.
Pathetic.
At least the first time, I said, Wonder Woman made it to 220 something, Flash made it to 230 something, Green Lantern made it to 180, but they had good second lives. Now I don't, we may see a couple of the DC books get to 100, but I'm guessing that like when Batman gets to 100, it's going to start over either with the 5G or with Bendis or one of his cronies taking over with a new #1 like they did for Superman. And I said Batman should be on issue 700 or 800 and something by now. Well, actually, closer to 9 something. I think
849.
Yeah, give or take. And I said, X-Men was the last holdout at Marvel, and in the last 6 or 7 years, that has been relaunched. I don't know how many times, and I mean, you need a PhD in numerology to know where to put all this stuff. Okay, so next, New 52. Now, again, like I said, having been a reader forever, I remember the lean years at DC when nothing really mattered, and so the Crisis on Infinite Earths was definitely something that was necessary. Now, a lot of old time readers complained about all the changes because they didn't recognize their DC anymore, but it really wasn't that drastic. I mean, there were drastic changes made to some of the core characters, but they also left a lot intact and just built a cohesive universe from that. And for about 20 years, creatively, DC was, consistently better than Marvel. And unfortunately, they consistently got their teeth kicked down their throats sales-wise. I mean, it's got to be, depressing to put out quality output every month and just have Marvel just throw out whatever they want and then have Image come along and just kill them in sales. So they started, they got the idea in their head to do another Crisis, in about 2006, and then another one in 2007, and then, et cetera, and then Darkest Night, and they really couldn't get any traction. So by about 2011, they decided we're just going to do an event and reset everything. So, which they did. Unfortunately, I said, well, what can we do to shake things up? And I guess somebody at DC said, I know, let's make all of our characters assholes. So I don't know if you were reading back then, but Green Lantern became a more obnoxious version of Ryan Reynolds' movie portrayal.
Perfect.
You had Superman you know, they took him back to, you know, 1938, you know, with where he was like, you know, the very early Superman, he was, you know, he would go out and, you know, fight wife beaters and you know, unions and things like that. He's basically a socialist hero. And that's kind of what Grant Morrison went back to. And it's like they you know, took all the other characters and just made them as different as they possibly could for shock value, except for Batman and Green Lantern, which were the only two properties that were selling at all, you know, leading up to that. So they said, you kind of leave them alone, just make minor alterations. And, you know, it worked for about 6 or 8 months. I mean, the sales really took off, but then people realized,
Marvel.
They go, man, this stuff really isn't any good. And then, you know, they got in there and said, you know, okay, the shock value's worn off. Let's just kind of go back to being some kind of, you know, comic book universe. But by that time, the New 52 had a stench attached to it that I don't think they were ever able to shake. Now, I've gone back, you know, I mean, I quit reading DC as a result of New 52. I think a lot of people did. I have since gone back and started reading a lot of it because I found a couple places that are selling them for a dime. You know, if I can get, you know, an Earth 2 Society Ends or whatever for a dime, you know, I'll take it. And, you know, and it's not as bad across the board as, you know, its reputation kind of got, or maybe it's because it's comic book history now and it's easier to look at it through that lens. But at the time, that was a massive slap in longtime readers' faces because it just changed.
Paved with good intentions. It was a great idea to, you know, the continuity is convoluted. Let's put it all, you know, together in one easier to digest format. But they executed it wrong because they didn't realize this. They lost the spirit of the characters.
Well, yeah, you know, that's what they did with Crisis. They took literally, like I said, the Infinite Earths and put it into one, so it was easier to control. And then again, some of the, you know, hardline Silver Age fans played a big part in undoing all that in the first decade of the 21st century. And yeah, that's, I think to a degree we're still seeing that because, you know, we have, you know, the multiverse is back in all its glory, even in Rebirth. And my fifth is, you know, what I refer to, for lack of a better term, is SJW Marvel.
Marvel Now, or does that precede that?
Well, you know, I basically the Axel Alonso era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to set it up, you know, after the disastrous Bill Jamaas reign at Marvel, they put Joe Quesada in charge of everything. Up to that point, he'd just been, you know, Marvel Knights. And at the time, Quesada had a lot of really good ideas. He wanted to bring continuity back. He wanted to bring, you know, a cohesive universe back. And it started with House of M, went into Civil War. And say what you will about Civil War, you know, yes, a lot of the characters were horribly misused, but the idea behind it originally good. Unfortunately, down the road became a very overused trope of heroes fighting heroes, and, you know, villains being heroes, heroes being villains. But at the time, it really hadn't been done, you know, on this scale, you know, in comics, and that led into Secret Invasion, which led into Dark Reign, which led into Siege. And as far as, you know, creativity, that 5 or 6 year stretch at Marvel, I would say, is arguably unmatched by any company in any 5 year stretch. I'm not saying it's the best, but it was, I mean, Marvel was must reading. They had the top writers, the top artists. They were clicking on all cylinders. And then it started to unravel a little bit with Fear itself. And I guess based on the success leading up to that, they kicked Quesada upstairs and installed Axel Alonso. And almost immediately, identity politics started creeping in. You know, they replaced, you know, Ms. Marvel, who was never a tremendously popular character, but one that, you know, certainly had her fans, with Captain Marvel. And if that had been done as a logical progression, it would have worked. But she was used as a tool for, you know, feminism and basically a, you know, take that patriarchy type of character. And I think, you know, within 5 or 6 years, that character, I mean, within 5 or 6 years, she was a space dictator, a murderer. I mean, there's no redeeming qualities in that character. And then, you know, right after that, Marvel introduced an X-Women book, and the way they promoted it was, we've covered up all the girls. You know, which, okay, that's fine, but that seemed to be more like, you know, pitting one group of fans against the other. It was like, you know, hey, you guys that like, you know, sexy women heroes, you know, take that, you know. And so it became, at some point, you know, agenda replaced adventure at Marvel. And, you know, then you got all new, all different, all, you know, all unreadable, all, you know, it just, like I said, what, you know, the 5 years leading up to Alonzo, all that creativity, the 5 years into Alonzo, all wiped out.
It's crazy too, because at the same time you had the MCU taking off, and then they basically swapped out all of their main characters with new versions that normies coming in off the street, going to their local comic shop, be like, I just discovered Iron Man, and then you go in and it's like, oh, he's not in the comic book, he's dead.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? Like, oh, I just watched Captain America. I want to read about Steve Rogers. Like, Steve Rogers isn't Captain America, it's Falcon now, huh? It was just probably the biggest wasted opportunity I could ever imagine. Just the timing of it was a debacle.
Oh, hey, look, kids, we got Steve Rogers. Oh, no, he's a Nazi. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up with the 5 biggest slaps in the face. You know, I really appreciate you coming on the channel. I know you got lots of knowledge to give out to the fans, and to me especially. You know, I always learn something when we talk about comics. I really appreciate it. And next time, maybe we'll do the 5 times the comic industry kicked readers in the nuts. What do you think about that?
Well, like I said, you know, I did use the visual aid for the, you know, face slapping. I will not be using one for the next one.
All right. Later, buddy.
All right. Take care.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.